All right, y'all, so we're going to get started. Welcome to Artists versus the Audience, Representation in Animation. We're talking about, the debate of it, whether it is a debate. So you read the short description, but here today we're going to talk about representation means who appears on screen. It lives in character, culture, ability, gender, sound, design, authorships, and of course the assumptions creators and audiences bring to the theater. Today we're exploring the push and pull between those forces, the creative intent and audience interpretation. And we're going to be asking our panelists who have an amazing skills and a diverse background themselves to give us some ideas and practical applications for representation on screen. That said, I'm going to roll right into our bios and get to know our illuminaries up here. Here we go. I am Fatimah Abdullah. I am an animation producer. I've worked around town a lot, usually as an executive producer or producer. I came up through production management. We're going to talk about these folks today. We've got Saxton Moore and Saxton Moore Senior here today. Saxton Moore is a creative storyteller and screenwriter. Oh, I'm reading the other Saxton's bio, forgive me. I thought I might do that. Emmy award-winning creative executive with 20 years of experience leading animation, storytelling, and original IP development across film, television, and publishing. He has directed and produced award-winning content for global platforms including Disney+, Netflix, Nickelodeon, and Sesame Workshop, building stories that resonate across cultures and generations. Today, he's the founder of Saxton Moore Production and a creative director for Underscore Animation. His focus is on developing original IP and scalable creative pipelines that merge storytelling with emerging technology, including AI-powered animation workflows. His work lives at the intersection of culture, technology, and imagination, spanning publishing and franchise development. He's currently exploring partnerships across studios, brands, and platforms, looking to build the next generation of storytelling. Welcome, Saxton. And we've also got Saxton's reel to show you. Here we go. Sorry.
Do we want to put the lights down?
Yeah.
Oh, good idea. Thank you. That'll give us a chance to scoot.
Let's watch it in full glory. Let's not cheat the business.
Thank you, guys. I like this fireside chat develops, to be honest. Round table. Did we get the lights?
Yeah, they're getting loud.
Is this the last panel of the day for you guys?
Yes.
Yeah, for me, yeah.
Good.
It's
Thanks
the
for
last
sticking it
panel
out.
of the day for everyone.
Everyone. Yes. And we are going to try to make room for about 20 minutes of questions, but if anything comes up, you have an immediate need to ask, feel free to shoot up your hands. We want this to be a dialogue for sure.
I need to learn what the light buttons are.
That would be interesting. That would be a real fireside chat. While we're looking for those lights, and I'll stop as soon as they find them, we're going to talk about Dr. T. So Dr. Trinity Velez-Justo is the director of film and media scoring and assistant professor of music at UGA, Athens representing. Thank you for coming on down. So we can call her Dr. T in this panel. Dr. T is an award-winning composer and sound designer, craftsperson, educator, and public speaker with a passion for helping others navigate in a competitive industry in the arts. Yes, it is. After receiving their BA of music at UNC Chapel Hill and MFA in music composition at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts. There we are. All right, pause. Now let's take a look at Saxton's reel. Thank you for bringing that. IYANU was producer right here in Atlanta, headed up by Saxton. Speaking of excellent music choices and reels, back to Dr. T. So where we left off is, through their business, ReelSpring LLC, Trinity utilizes both administrative and technical skill sets to provide the best services for their clients and students. While completing their doctorate in musical arts at the Ohio State University, Trinity moved to Athens, Georgia to continue their academic journey in teaching and research. They are now an assistant professor of music and director of the Film and Media Scoring Program at UGA, and their research focuses on how media and music and its production influences perceptions and narratives of marginalized groups and incorporates studies in film and media, sound culture, psychology, and sociology. Thank you for being with us, Dr. T. Yes. All right. Next up, we've got Saxton Moore Jr. Yes, that is massive talent running in the family. Saxton Moore Jr. is a creative storyteller and screenwriter passionate about uplifting Black voices through film, television, and literature. Cinema, television, and emerging media studies major at Morehouse College with business administration minor. That's a good choice. He developed experience in writing, directing, leadership, and content creation. But wait, in 2023, he published his debut children's book, Wendell Scott, Born Driven, in partnership with the Wendell Scott Foundation, Oni Press, and distributed by Simon & Schuster. You might have heard of them. He has also worked as a production apprentice through the Reimagine ATL HBCU Fellowship, and as a student leader with the Morehouse College National Alumni Association, helping young Black boys build pivotal developmental skills. Thank you for being with us, Saxton.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, our keynote speaker, Lauren Brown, is with us today. Digital art director with Wizards of the Coast. Lauren is an Emmy Award-winning illustrator and art director who has worked for companies such as Google, Marvel, EA, Wizards of the Coast, and Amazon Games. She uses her love of storytelling and whimsy to draw viewers into her world by immersing them in the realm of fantasy and whimsy. She loves representing the union of nature and humanity and the motion in one image, forgive me. After receiving her MFA from SCAD, she went on to break into the animation and gaming industries with credits that include shows such as Archer, The League, Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and on games such as The Simpsons, Tapped Out, and Words with Friends. She currently works at Wizards of the Coast as digital art director. She's also an advocate of inclusion and equity in gaming and animation industries, and is actively pursuing outreach and mentorship at schools, colleges, conventions, and through her co-hosted podcast, Painted in Color. Thanks for hanging out, Lauren. All right. So I have a list of questions I'll get started with, but as I mentioned, please feel free to, chime in. We're going to start out back with Saxton Senior up here, but I'd like to go down the line and ask, first, what does representation mean to you? And how might you be pursuing it in a current project?
Hello? Okay. Representation to me is very important. As a storyteller, tell our stories to connect with others and also express ourselves. And a lot of the things I've heard throughout the day is about the industry and all this other stuff and getting jobs, but at the end of the day, we're storytellers through art. And so representation to me, every project I do, as you see in my reel, personifies my culture, hip-hop culture, Black culture. And I think it gives people a glimpse into the world that I've lived in and grown up in. And representation, I kind of liken it to when you go out to eat to a Mexican restaurant. As soon as you walk through the door, you're immersed in their culture, through the decorum, through the art, and through the food, right? Same with ramen. You go in there, you get Japanese culture. And I see entertainment as a way. You're introducing and giving people light into different cultures, and it makes people, it allows people to embrace the world that you grew up in. So that's how I see representation.
How academic do you want me to be?
Stuart Hall.
Representation, Stuart Hall. Because you have 3 different. It's kind of cutting off. Sorry. I'll just throw it back at you last next time. Okay. So yeah, you have your signifiers, your signified. You have your 3 types: iconic, indexical, and symbolic. If you really want to get to that point, look up Stuart Hall and the idea of representation. But representation, it's a difficult term. It really is, because it comes down to not just who is being represented, but who is representing, and how the perceiver is feeling that or experiencing that representation. So there could be, same thing with impact versus intention, right? So a lot of my research goes into this idea of representation in a musical and sonic lens. Let's think about Spider-Verse, right? Into the Spider-Verse, okay. Many people, especially within the Black and brown cultures, Miles Morales, he's my man, Afro-Rican. He is a representative of multiple cultures. However, who are the people who are in charge of this production, and how are they representing Black and brown culture? So, I could dig into this a lot, so I'm not going to, maybe later. But it is very tricky, because then you have to ask yourself, is it appropriate and accurate representation? And if it is not, then we need to consider what needs to be done in order for it to be more accurate and appropriate in representing, because what is being represented, if it is not accurate or appropriate, someone may perceive it as so, right? So, I'm not gonna get that much deeper. Don't go. Thank you.
So, here. Great. What representation means to me, you know, in the culture of the industry now, representation means seeing yourself and other cultures represented in what you see. So, being a young Black man, I love to see, you know, people who look like me within the things I watch, the things I consume within the media. And I'm sure every one of you have your own kind of identity that you want to see represented within the media. So representation to me means that, you know, seeing yourself, seeing other cultures, other identities, other things within the media and the industry. Like you were saying with Spider-Verse, like seeing Spider-Man, which was one of my favorite heroes, look like me, instantly he became one of my favorite superheroes, you know? So, you know, representation is that, you know, seeing someone like you in a film, a show, or across media, it you know, just makes you feel seen. So representation to me is feeling seen.
Thank you.
So representation for me is, you know, getting to see the different cultures, different backgrounds, different identities as represented in art. And the reason why that's important, especially when we're talking about proper representation, thoughtful representation, with well-researched documentation, people who are actually from that identity, actually, you know, designing or consulting or creating these depictions. The reason why that's so important is because with art, we don't make art unless it's something that is important to us. Whatever we find in history, whatever you find depicted, you know, you look in the past and you see these Venus sculptures, and you see like, oh, like curvy women, like big beautiful women. That was something that actually, you know, was important to different cultures, and we know that it's important because of the fact that they are represented. So when we see ourselves represented in cultures and, you know, in our society, you know, in shows and TV and games, we know that we are important by the fact that we are represented here in a thoughtful, accurate way. Improper representation is when that culture is caricaturized or misrepresented to be a stereotype of something. But that thoughtful, meaningful representation lets us know that we're important, lets us know that we can be empowered and that we can strive for anything. That's part of the reason why Miles Morales was such a big inspiration to so many Black people and Puerto Rican people, is because we get to see a hero function in that role as an authentic, just, you know, a kid just like existing in society, and then he gets superpowers. And we didn't really get to see that much growing up in our superheroes, and like that's why it's so important, because someone chose to spend millions of dollars on a thoughtful depiction of a beautifully represented character. And so that's what representation means to me, is like to be able to represent something thoughtfully in art and to put it into art as something that's important to our culture and society.
Thank you. Yes. So let's get into brass tacks a bit, right? Because we're talking about art and kind of seeing the final image on screen. Where does representation show up in the creative process? You're all vets of our space. Where have you seen it done well, perhaps? Where should it show up, specifically in the pipeline or the workflow, coming from creative development all the way to that final image?
I'll give an example of a project I worked on for, it was right after the pandemic, called Disney Rise Up, Sing Out. There's a clip of it on there, and it was kind of controversial because it taught kids why racism is wrong. Taught about microaggressions and things like that. And so when we were in the design process, I wanted to make sure, by the way, it was with the Roots crew, and they were doing the music, but what I wanted to make sure is that for young kids, they felt seen. And so I consciously wanted to make sure that when people of color saw these kids on the screen, that they knew someone Black was behind the design. And so I consciously, like, throughout the history of animation, I'm a big fan of animation, people of color have always had brown skin on both sides of their hands. And I was like, well, I'm gonna make sure that the characters who are diverse in this series had different color skin tones. And the palm of their hands was different. I don't know if a lot of people caught that when they saw it, but that was intentional. And also the hairstyle on a young girl had an African hairstyle. Disney pushed back. It was like, oh, why can't she have Afro puffs? And I was like, every time they make a little black girl, they default to the Afro puffs, right? And I was like, no, this is important. And it became an educational lesson to a lot of the designers that weren't of color on that team. And so her name was Rajaniqua, and she had an African, her mother or father was of African descent. And so that's where the hairstyle came from. Another thing that I wanted to do for a young boy was he had sneakers, 2 different colors, right? Same sneaker, 2 different colors. I was like, is this a mistake? I was like, no. Mm-hmm. In Black culture, the sneaker culture, when they buy sneakers, if it's a flex. When you have 2 the same color, two different color sneakers, the same sneaker. And I had to explain it to him, so it became a mode of education about the culture. And it's represented on the screen, so when people of color see things like that, there's the little touches in the design that they can connect with and know that someone of color is representing them to the fullest on the opposite side of the entertainment.
And has enough money for 2 sets of top ones. That's right.
Yes.
No, that's awesome. And actually, you're a great segue. So, in the realm of sound and music, you know, for myself at least, I like to be involved in the script process. So, once the script is done, get me involved in the conversation so I can start developing templates and start doing research to then start considering the sonic world. And so, when we're thinking about especially in regards to representation, there are 3 things that I highly encourage creators to do, whether it be in composition, sound design, but in all roles of the industry. Number 1, always do your research. Always do your research. And doing research as in listening to multiple examples, watching multiple films, trailers, playing video games, just immersing yourself in the content of the culture in which you are trying to represent. Again, this idea of accurate and appropriate representation. But number two, and this is why I love hearing you speak about your process and your approach, is that you need to include someone of that culture in your process, because they're the ones who are living it. And the last thing is, give credit where it's due. I can give you some trivia about Black Panther. We're not going to go there, but there's some trivia on Black. I mean, if you want me to, I can.
Can we go there just
Yeah.
recently?
Yeah.
I mean, we got time.
All right. So in Black Panther, we all love Ludwig Göransson. He's great. So he had asked Disney to go to Africa. At first, they said no. Then he was given 4 weeks, just 4 weeks in Africa, and he ended up going to Southern Africa, so Johannesburg, which also he was able to do some research in West African music as well. He went to Elam, the International Library of African Music. Now, the thing about Elam that I have an issue with is that this guy named Tracy Hughes? Okay, now I'm blanking out his name. But in the early 1900s, 1940s, 1950s, he went to multiple places in Africa, went to tribes, and said, hey, I'd like to record your music. No, record it this way. And so here then is my challenge with this idea of representation, right, in certain lenses, right, is that here we have a non-African lens sharing this information of what African music sounds like. And so this is a lot of what Ludwig Göransson had immersed himself in thinking this is what African music sounds like, number one. Number two, Bob Amal said, hey, hang out in my studio, here's some folks that you can work with. And so the thing about African music is that it is an embodied experience. So in many cultures or many languages within the continent of Africa, dance and music is the same word, okay? It is, or it's defined by the same word, right? So it is very much integral or integrated with one another, right? It's an amalgamation. And so he had heard a Fulani flutist, Abdullah, playing this sequence, and he's like, that's the sound of a Killmonger. So he brought in a translator, he said, hey, this is who Killmonger is, what comes to mind. So he is like in it, and there's recordings of this online in some of his interviews, and he's just putting his entire body into depicting Killmonger. And he's like, I love the sound, this is Killmonger. And what came out of this flute became the ancestral theme. Who's getting credit for that ancestral theme?
The flutist.
Right. You would think, right? But you don't see the flutist anywhere in the credits, right? And yet what is most frustrating is that he's talking about it openly. That there is this flutist who came up with the sequence, which he then sampled, transcribed, and transposed for multiple instruments in creating the ancestral theme. And so, while I love Ludwig Göransson, and maybe this may not have been a choice of his, right? May have been the choice of the network or a choice of Disney, et cetera, and maybe there was discrepancies on royalties. Who was going to get the royalties from this thing being played over and over? But either way, he's not the original person, right? What bothers me is like when you see John Williams or a theme of John Williams being used in Star Wars or Harry Potter, et cetera, he is always credited. So,
And getting the royalties.
And getting the royalties. So this idea of intellectual property, right? So this is why I mean give credit where it's due, because it took their intellectual creative genius to come up with something that would essentially represent the entire franchise. So, thank you for being part of the process, and please give it where it's due.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes. one thing I always try to highlight is dialogue. Everyone speaks differently based on where you come from, either city, country, continent, and especially across the diaspora of Africans. So I just completed an internship at Tyler Perry Studios, and during that internship, we made a short film. And, you know, those characters in our short film were black, and when we were sitting in the writer's room, dialogue was one of those problems that we were having. So we sat down and tried to figure out how they speak, where they're from mattered a lot. So we sat down, did some research on how those particular people spoke from that city, and we made sure that the characters were, in line throughout the entire script. Since we have 3 writers, we all had to be on the right page about how they all spoke. And dialogue plays a role in all of my stories. Like one of my recent scripts that I wrote, my first feature-length script, it took place, it was a fantasy story, and it dealt with black people who had flown into the sky seeking freedom. And this black boy from, Earth, he's like from South Carolina, goes up to the sky from these Africans who had jumped off a boat and flown into the sky. So their dialect is different from the black boy's dialect who came from South Carolina. So I had to make a stark difference between how they were represented in that story. So yeah, when it comes to development, I always think about the specific small details.
Thanks. And a quick follow-up question for you. When you were working with your actors to get the dialects right in your short film, did it take more time than you were expecting to coach everyone?
It didn't take that much more time. They had already had a good understanding of how they would talk in the story. Thanks to our director and the writing team, we got them down pat pretty quickly.
Lauren?
So I worked on many different projects where this issue has come up. All the projects that I work on personally always have always a manner of representation of identities that look similar to mine, or identities of marginalized groups of people. But when I'm working in the game industry or animation, oftentimes I'm usually the only person who looks like me of my identity on those whole teams. And so it often falls to me to uphold the standard of making sure that we're thoughtfully representing the people who are representing in the projects that we're working on. The gaming industry is a massive industry. There's like 87% of young people play games. It's just a part of it's an ingrained part of our culture, and to not have any representation on those teams is such a huge detriment to what we're actually putting out in the games. And so there was a lot of responsibility that I felt to have to make sure that I was reminding people, hey, when you're saying that a character that you're designing for a game that I worked on IDA is supposed to have locks, then they can't be braids, they're supposed to be locks. Those are 2 different hairstyles, extremely different processes. And then I would have to answer questions about why is that important though? And so it's a lot of reminding people about cultural significance of hairstyles, of representation, of why there's certain choices that are made for how people show up in different cultures, and also just making sure, like you said, doing the deep research and understanding why certain things are, why textiles are worn, why hairstyles or jewelry are worn, why people speak the way they speak, even the things that show up in languages. It shows what's important to a culture, the fact that dance and music they're combined, they're entwined. Those are all important things. And I think that a lot of people, because representation has been so lacking in the media that we've grown up with, that people are just simply not aware of, they're ignorant to. When I get to teams that are more representative of the people who are going to be in the games, then those conversations have to happen less, but then we get to share knowledge about what it is that we can bring from each of our cultures into the project. So recently, for Magic the Gathering, there was a project that I've been working on that finally got announced last month called Jalfir. And Jalfir is a Afro-fantasy set. It's our first expression of Afro-fantasy in this way since we went to this plane back in '96. And everybody on this plane is from the Black diaspora in some kind of way. And what we did from the very beginning, they hired on a concept artist, Eric Wilkerson, who's also my co-host on my podcast, and an illustrator for Magic. And he got there early and it was like, we're going to make sure that we are unapologetic, that we are going to not shy away from any of the themes that we have here, and that we are going to make sure that we are authentically and researching everything and getting consultants in. And all of our concept artists were Black. I was pulled in for the concept push on it. And it was just us in a room just researching and digging deep and finding deep cuts and things that showed that it's not just a set that's representing Afro-fantasy and all these different, fantasy kinds of cultures that are based off of real cultures, but also made by the people who are from those cultures, who are thinking about the things that are important to us and how we infuse those into the characters. So it's something that, has gotten easier over time as I've gained my voice as an artist and as an art director. But it's something that, we're always going to have to constantly be on top of and reminding people of, and sometimes we'll find ourselves as the only one in the room and we have to be that voice of reason and saying, hey, why am I the only one in this room?
Thank you. So kind of going off of that, we've come up in our careers, right? You might have seen a lot of different kinds of budgets as you've been going through different projects. How does that process change based on the resources you have available in your project, right? So I've kind of grown up in the indie world alongside the commercial world. And sometimes I find that in the independent world where there are fewer resources, people are showing up in the right way. The executives are doing a lot of the right things. So does that kind of change when you have more resources, say like the size of Black Panther, or when Disney pushes back, how you integrate practices in your process?
That's kind of a loaded question. The budget doesn't really dictate. I think no matter what the budget is, if you have an opportunity to put a piece of work on the screen for the world to see, you take whatever the budget is, and if you're the director or you're in the role of leadership, you have to keep morale high. You're all there to tell a great story, and sometimes even the smallest budget, you can pull off the most masterful pieces of work because everybody there is there to do a great job and put something that accumulates the talent of everyone on the screen. Look at the most recent films that have made a lot of money with small budgets. Obsession, Backrooms, anime films like Chainsaw Man had a budget in Demon Slayer roughly around $4 million. And that was, the television quality. It wasn't feature film quality, but the return on that investment was great, right? So I don't think the budget really, it's great to have a nice budget. Sometimes when you have too much money, there's too many people, too many cooks in the kitchen that kind of make the project take longer. When you have a limited budget, you rise to the occasion and you pull the best out of you. And then after all that hard work, you look at the screen and you're like, wow, look at what we did with what little we had, right? So that's what I'd say about that.
You are your greatest when you are your most vulnerable. That's an interesting question. I think I'm going to be coming from when I'm not in a place of leadership, right? Because I'm very much a contractor, right? I do what they tell me to do. But it really depends on, one, creativity, and two, the trust, right? The trust that you've developed with the one who's in charge, or the ones that are in charge. So if you do end up with a larger budget, one, they have the trust in creativity, as well as the trust in what you contribute. That includes, so not just your talent, not just your skill set, but also in what you can provide in a conversation. So with that trust, right, then yes, you might have more flexibility in being more accurately and appropriately representative course, at the end of the day, it is your choice, right? So if someone says, hey, I want you to represent this culture, and they're not willing to give me the appropriate compensation to compensate the other person that I want to involve in the process, I'm not going to be a part of that project. But that's just from my ethics and morals, right? But this is where then it becomes interesting, right? You have less budget, that you're like, okay, well, how much do I want to help, one, the folks who are like members of this community, and two, even within my own community, to come together and be not just more accurately and appropriately representative, but also how many hearts and minds we can touch to where then their voices are amplified, our voices are amplified, right? Like one of my biggest pet peeves is, so let's say if you are in a specific community, whether Black community, brown community, Asian community, et cetera, oftentimes we gravitate towards just each other in producing artwork. But, just as I had said previously, you want to have more perspectives in the room, right, in order to touch then more hearts and minds. Because really you have to ask yourself, in a marketing point, who is your target audience? And if you want to make more money, you have to be able to then expand your target audience. Therefore, it is an absolute necessity to bring in other perspectives into your creative process so you can include everyone, right? So then I start to ask the question, representation equals inclusivity. And therefore, who are we including in this process to then also be included in who is heard, seen, right? We are comfortable with what we find most familiar. Therefore, we need to increase those opportunities of feeling familiar, right? Gaining that familiarity. Okay, now I feel like I'm rambling, but did I answer that question?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, you did it really well.
All
So, so we're talking about kind of like, does the budget, does the complexity of the project impact, how you handle inclusivity, representation within a project?
Okay. Well, I haven't gotten to the point to be able to work towards budgets yet, but fingers crossed. But we did have a fake budget during my internship, and we didn't have problems with representation because we had a lot of creative control. But I do know that the budget can take things away based on what it is, and I'll just give my opinion on it. I believe that there should be room in the budget to put in representation, either finding outside sources to give their opinions and experiences into what is being represented. Say if you're using telling a story of a different culture and there's no one from that culture within the story, in the team making that story, they should bring in someone who knows about that. And I just think that with the project I'm working on now, Kudzu, I know that the budget is not going to be high, but with that, I'm going to be sure to. It's a very southern story because Kudzu is a southern plant, so I'm using locals around here to film in a location where Kudzu is very very around. Couldn't think of a word. So I was just speaking to a professor, and I was talking to him about the Chattahoochee River, which is nearby in West Atlanta, and Kudzu is very prominent there because that's where it grows a lot, and it's mainly been planted. So with that, the culture of the people who live around there, they have more of a wealth of knowledge on Kudzu and how it grows. Like my professor gave me the insight of, oh yeah, you need to film this soon because when October hits, Kudzu is going to start dying. And I was like, oh, you're right. Yeah, I should probably get on that. So that's my.
Yeah.
Fatimah,
Have you tasted kudzu jelly yet?
I haven't tasted it. I just recently learned that it was.
It's edible.
I just recently learned that it was edible. At this restaurant I was just working at, they had a alcoholic beverage that was
That's
kudzu.
good spot. Okay, all right.
So,
Come up, Sal.
yeah.
Fatimah,
Hey,
hi,
hey.
can I chime in, because you're talking about budget?
Oh, sure. So Ashley Davis, animation producer here in Atlanta.
Oh gosh, hi.
Hello. Okay, I don't really need a mic. I'm also loud like Fatimah. We used to work together, and we still do on occasion. So I guess my question is, and I don't have an answer, but when we're talking about budget and low budget and high budget, and Saxton, like you were talking about, you know, we have a low budget, so we're gonna like problem solve and just all chip in and make it a passion project. I oftentimes have seen that with projects that are representing, you know, people that are of different cultures, and sometimes it feels a little unfair that you're given 10 grand, you know, just make something amazing, and now you're asking all of your team to show up and give their best and go 120%. And it almost becomes a slippery slope, because you're asking them to show up extra when they're not getting that extra compensation. So I guess, you know, like, where do we draw the line between doing a passion project and showing up and giving our best effort versus standing up for ourselves and making sure that, like, me and my team are properly compensated? And I don't know the answer. Yeah. Thank you, guys.
I do want to, yeah, thank you. I don't know about anyone else here, but there's a word for that, right? Showing up, doing twice as much, making half as much, right? It's a common challenge we deal with in the industry. Do you guys want to take it fast?
Oh, I interrupted Lauren.
Oh, you're all good. Yeah.
So we'll come back to that question, and then we'll open it up to questions too.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, lastly, just what I wanted to say about the budget part of it, is that there's definitely a certain level of creativity that happens when you have less budget to accomplish a certain project. And I think that honestly, I felt empowered more so to make my best work that is best representative of what it is that I wanted to do with less budget, because we only had so many parameters to work in. That's where you really get creative. When things have gotten too large, there's definitely been too many cooks in the kitchen, and a lot of people enforcing their opinions about what should be here and what shouldn't be here, and then a lot of the things and ideas that I've had, or that people who wanted to add representation have had and gotten more easily shot down. But for me, every project starts with a baseline of having some level of representation. So for me, like, time budget is like my only budget, but it always starts with, with somebody who is of the non-dominant culture, and like how much research I can do. I choose to spend time on it because I think when you have less budget, you have to choose what you spend time on and what's important to you. And so what comes up in that project is representative of that. So I think that if people are not representing because citing that we have less budget, it's like, no, you didn't have less budget. You just weren't creative enough. So we got to be more creative in terms of how we represent. Like, for example, in the game industry, when game devs are asked to render, kinky, oily hair, they tend to be like, oh, I don't know how to do this too hard, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, there's actually a lot of ways to do it creatively, and many teams have proven that they can do this beautiful representation with limited budget. There's a Campo Santo studio, and like they put extra care into representing their main character, Vivian's hair, I think it was.
Where are they based?
They were in California. They don't exist anymore, sadly. I was really looking forward to this game called In the Valley of the Gods. The main character was a black woman who had, coily hair, 4C hair, and they put special research behind it, special practice behind it. But it's an indie studio. It's a small studio. But they showed what's important to them by what they chose to spend time on. And so I think that in smaller projects, if you don't choose to represent people because you don't have budget to do it, it's just like you didn't get creative enough and you didn't think that it was important enough for you to do so. So that's my opinion on budget and how it affects projects like that.
Thank you.
Okay, now the question.
Yeah, now I was gonna say, can we like revisit, you know,
Segue.
kind of that, you know, what does it feel like when, basically, you know, there's a saying, the crap rolls downhill. If it's all messed up in the top of line, above the line, sometimes we have to deal with that below the line. So how does that, you know, Ashley's question to, when does it start to feel like you're asking too much from your artists and your team to make up the difference?
There's been a lot of creative ways. At least recently, I heard about the project Zendaya did. It was like was it Spike Lee's? Yeah, the black and white film. So I think they had a small budget, but what she did is all the people that worked on that film got a percentage of it. And so when they started, when it went on HBO and then they, you know, I guess licensed it out or whatever, the back end money that it was making, everybody that took part in that project had a piece of a profit. So there's a lot of creative ways. When you're dealing with, you know, major studios and everything, you're kind of tied into whatever they dictate. When you're working on an independent project, a lot of times you know, whether it's Kickstarter or something, you raise a little bit of money to make your dreams come true or to make this film that you and your collective want to make. I think that was a great example of, you know, keeping morale up by making promises and getting contracts to say that, hey, you're a special part of this project, and I know we have a small budget, but once we start making money off of it, now you have a piece of ownership within it. Yeah. So there's creative ways, if you put your mind to it, where everyone that dedicated their time and their talents to it can benefit on the back end.
I do want to open it up to questions. Did anybody else on the panel have a, yeah?
So I want to talk about on the other side. I think we should be friends. So on the other side, right, if you are a person that is on that team that is not getting much money, okay, I want you to think about, this is a business concept that I try and teach my students, this idea of sacrifices versus investments, okay? So there is a difference. Sacrifices means you're not going to get anything from the project. Investment means that you're going to get something potentially much later, okay? So I want to have you remember the 3/4 R's. Okay? First one is rapport/reputation. So does this project give you an opportunity to get closer to a specific person or entity that you want to work with? Okay. To the idea of reputation, how is this project going to help you in the grand scheme of your community? Are you able to then increase your clientele or further your career based off of this project? Number 2, representation. How does this project represent your talent/skill set? Is there potential for this project to get to a major festival, Sundance, Tribeca, potentially get distributed, become potentially viral, right? Because virality comes also from the time spent into it. The better you do with it, but also learning your marketing, right? Learning the trends, et cetera, right? So, and also with that representation, potentially accolades, right? Which again, will then increase your client base or further your career. And the third one /4 is your return, your business return. So maybe you're not getting compensated, but is this going to help you develop a skill set that is going to help you in developing the quality of your work, your skill set? Or you can maybe negotiate, instead of getting money or compensation, a sample library, for example, on my end, right? Like a sample library or a piece of software or hardware or something that will, again, help you to increase the quality of your work that then you can get higher paying clients later. So,
Those are really good different perspectives on the same topic. Saxton, Lauren, did you have anything to add? Okay. So opening the floor to more questions. Anything buzzing? Yes? Plaid shirt, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess like my big question is like I remember like, you know, hearing about like, you know, like doing like, you know, research and like into like what you're like representing and whatnot. But I I guess my big question is like, once you like have like that research and that knowledge, how do you like sort of like convey that to a creative team to sort of like, you know, coordinate like a specific sort of like voice or aesthetic or like a character or like an overall work? Like, what's that been like in sort of like a team environment for like you guys?
So how do you present your big idea and your research to a creative team once you have come up with results? Or perhaps how do you just provide feedback on the, you really shouldn't go there for that decision, right?
Well, I'm an arts director, this is my job. That's literally what I do. What I have to make sure of is that my communication is on point. I create a visual language for everything that is in the, you know, the aesthetic that we're representing. You know, what this color language represents, like what the shape language represents, what these outfits represent, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And you distill all that down into, ideally, you have a style guide, something that can help all of your artists follow along and, you know, follow this research that you've done, or that the team has done, ideally. It shouldn't just be one person researching, honestly, if the project is big enough. But if the project isn't big enough and you're bringing people in, the style guide is your guiding star, your North Star into what it is that you're supposed to be representing and how to thoughtfully represent it. But if you don't communicate that vision well, if you don't have any cohesion around what that visual language is supposed to be, if you don't have a language at all, then that can very easily fall apart if you haven't thought it through well. If you're just thinking, this is here because it looks cool, it's like that's not really good enough. It has to be, this is here because these match the themes in this way. This funnels up to the overall idea in this way. This says something about the character that is important and, you know, and meaningful. And so having that language helps your artists understand how to consistently convey it every time they have to represent it, whether it's in backgrounds, character design, storyboards, etc. It should guide all of that process going forward. So all projects have an art director, but that is what I do for a living, and that's what I love to do. So that's my job description.
And so, Lauren, say I'm an illustrator on your team. I've seen your style guide. I'm in love with it. I have some feedback. How would you like to receive that feedback as the art director if I'm the illustrator? How do I get that to you?
Oh, that's a great question. Please ask questions. I love getting feedback because it lets me know what it is that the artist is missing, any information that they don't have. It's my job to give that to them. But I don't know what what I don't know. And so if an artist is stuck or lost or confused about anything that's in that style guide, I can't know that unless they ask questions about that directly. So just ask your art director, directly. And like the projects that I've worked on in the past that have been the most successful is when the artist and I have a dialogue together. When they're saying, okay, I see in this part of the style guide you mentioned that you need this specific detail, but I don't know if I have the reference for it, or I'm a little confused, I need more elaboration. I'm like, oh my God, like, thank you so much. I'll amend the style guide and make sure that that's added to it. And so that helps me understand what it is that you need, but I don't know that if you don't ask questions. So just say, hey, I had a question about XYZ. Can you help me out to understand this a little bit better? That's really all it has to be. Art directors are people. Don't be too afraid to ask. I've met a lot of people who were too scared to speak up. An artist needs to advocate for themselves as well, because I love advocating for artists, but I can't do that if I don't have all the information too. So please advocate for yourself as an artist to your art director.
Thank you, yes.
A bit about what you said with, I forget how it was put exactly, I think it was sacrifice investment. I guess I'd like to ask if you could speak a little bit more to that, but I guess to provide some substance to that question, I'll provide some experience I've had in the past. I've worked for people who did not offer much, clearly did not respect my time, and I didn't respect myself enough to think about that. I thought, oh, I'm just getting an industry opportunity as a 25-year-old, I never had one. I don't know, I guess I was asking if you could elaborate.
I got you. Okay, so the other side of that coin, right? My husband and I, we have an inside joke, not really joke. Okay? I usually meet with a potential collaborator for 2 or 3 hours over coffee or something, just to get to know the person, okay? And just to get a feel for this person. Is this a person that I actually care to work with? Okay. I've also, COVID was a time where I did a lot of research on psychology and developmental psychology, behavioral psychology, in order for me to better read the room, i.e. the person, okay, that I'm potentially collaborating with. So there are certain signs that, or certain behaviors that people tend to carry when they're micromanagers, or highly anxious, or extremely insecure because they're hiding behind an ego, right? Things of that nature. That then I start to get these little red flags. Okay. So this inside joke is, I ask myself after this conversation, and potentially maybe we talked about budget or compensation for said project, I ask myself, am I going to make a profit after the therapy bills? After I pay for the therapy bills. And it is really important to consider this. No project is worth burnout, okay? Because burnout is more costly and expensive than leaving the project or just not doing the project, okay? I've suffered burnout 3 times in my life, and I said no more. Burnout took me what, 3, 6, sometimes 12 months to get over burnout, and that is 3 to 12 months of no work. Drop the project, don't do the project, right? Like you are worth, and this really comes down to valuing self-worth, okay? Knowing your value and embracing your value. Advocate for yourself, but also know that you are a human being worth time, energy, air, space, rest, nutrition, nourishment, right? Netflix. You are worth all of these things, and therefore not worth, not deserving of deprecating work. So that's my answer. Did that help? Excellent.
I think you've got a plaid jumper dress shirt. Yeah.
I had a question. So, being graduating art school when I was a student, coming to ASIFA events or WIA events, it was super encouraging because the crowd was so diverse. But then you start working and you're going to studios and you're getting jobs, and it's like, where are you guys, you know? I started a job and it's like, it's 50 shades of beige and it's all men. And sometimes we're working on a project where like, I do have experience because it is my lived experience, but me speaking up, it's like, I'm being annoying or we're just gonna keep going. How do you maintain confidence being sometimes like the only person in the room who looks like you or has your experience, and maybe the story they're telling is your own, but like when you try to tell them, hey, like we don't talk like that, or that doesn't make sense, or we don't look like that, it's like, well, shut up. You know what I mean? Like, how do you deal with that?
So we're gonna pass it on. As a producer, I don't know about you, but I showed up in that room so many times. Keep showing up. Thank you for being there in the first place. It's a brave place to be. But you might try going to your producer and just sidelining them. If you don't have a Lauren Brown in the room, right, who's going to listen and be there and kind of see you, sometimes you do have to escape the creative team, no disrespect, to make sure that, you know, you're getting past those points. And when we're talking about presenting our work, make sure you're drafting the email nicely. You're not trying to throw anybody under the bus. This is kind of coming from a position of, hey, I love our story. There's one part in it. And so that's how I love receiving information, kind of like tapping in and making sure, like as the producer, maybe cutting through some of that noise to hear those ideas, because you really don't know where the next amazing idea is going to come from. Thank you,
No, just like Fatimah said, keep showing up. I've been that person in that room many times in a corporate environment as well, when everybody looks at me like, I can't believe they said that. I didn't know not to say it. If it's something that represents you or your culture or your tribe that you're from, of course you gotta speak up and speak out about it. You know, just like my example with Disney, speaking out on the hairstyles and the sneaker culture and the skin tones and things like that, eventually you'll be heard. And when you speak up in those spaces, also create those spaces, right? Fill the room. That's what we did with IYANU. I have a friend here, Dawood, who's a part of IYANU as a first-time director. I made sure we brought that pre-production here to Atlanta so that we could fill the rooms with the talent with diverse men and women and people of all walks of life, so that everybody did have a voice. We were dealing with Nigerian culture, we hired Nigerian artists. In the style guide booklet, I included everything from food, African food, which some of the Nigerians was like, no, that's not how you make fufu. You know, and we want to make sure everything looked. If you haven't seen IYANU, you should watch it. We did everything authentic to the T. Nigerian voices. We had capoeira. We had Dambe boxing style. That was specific to that region. All those things are what we accumulated as a collective people with a voice. We were always open and worked together on everybody putting their input in to make sure it was 100% authentic. So be present, speak up, and also create the rooms for people like you to, speak up as well.
Can I answer this question too? Because I'm right now actively that person, even though I've been in the industry for such a long time. The team that I'm working on games is like, it's me. My producers are women, but I'm the only Black person on that team, and I'm like the only woman who's like an art director, creative on that team. And there was an issue that came up recently that the character wasn't being represented the way that she was supposed to be represented, and I brought it up. And I brought it to my creative director first because I was like, I know I just can't come in guns blazing in this room and being like, hey, this is wrong. I had to be very thoughtful about how I chose to pick that battle. And what I realized was that over time, you learn how to do corporate speak better and better as you get in those rooms with corporate people. And you can't just say, this is stupid, and here's why. You have to say, this is not representing the character properly, because if we go out to market with this, if I notice, people will notice. And we have, other art that it's like, I have to be very careful and delicate about how I phrase it, because it's something that I believe in. I will fight for it. I will fight until, but my creative director told me, he was like, you have to choose how to fight because you might actually die on that hill. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to lose respect from the team because next time I speak up, if I've lost that respect by, being thoughtless about how I approach the topic, then the next time it comes up, I'll be coined as somebody who I'm not. And that's the last thing you want, because once you lose that trust, it's very difficult to get it back. Mm-hmm. So understand how to, not just what battles to pick, but how to pick your battles, especially when you're the only one and you might be undefended, but also finding your allies in that space is also really important, because then you know what people will back you up, and you can say, hey, offline, hey, this is something that is actually really bothering me. I feel like my voice isn't being heard. Is there something that we can do in the room together? Even if they don't share your identity or your experience, if they feel like if they want to be an ally with you, let them prove that they are a true ally by having them stand up with you as well and saying, hey, actually listen to her, and she's from this identity, maybe we should hear her voice. I've had people do that in rooms before, and that's been such a huge help, just knowing where your allies are. So keep fighting the good fight. I know the feeling, I know it right now, and it's tough, but we still out here.
That's right. Do we have time for more questions? It is the last panel. All right.
Hello. My question for all of you is, since you all have some experience within corporate and with big and small studios, do you find that the ignorance to certain cultures is genuine or willful, and if you can tell the difference? Yeah, I'm bringing it there.
Thank you. Yeah, think about that. I think it's a bit of both. Partly ignorance, and a lot of times I use that as an opportunity to educate when they come with ignorance and not knowing about a specific culture. But you gotta respect everyone's culture and background, especially in this day and age when you put stuff out there for the world to see. As far as intentional, on the business side, a lot of it is intentional. If you notice when Black Panther first came out, in the US, they showed Chadwick Boseman on the cover of the posters. Across the pond and in other countries, that same poster had him with his mask on because they didn't think blackness would sell, across the world. So a lot of times it is intentional and it is part ignorance. So it's up to us as creatives to, like you said, be a voice in that room, and also create projects where no one can dictate whether you can be seen or not.
Oh, still thinking about it?
We can just call willful ignorance for what is stupidity. And I say this in the sense of, what was it? You can't argue with stupid, right? That's why I say it is stupidity, because willful ignorance are people who are choosing not to argue or choosing not to learn, right? Choosing not to change, choosing not to create space to consider all the other perspectives, right? So it's all about education, right? And even just when we're thinking about, oh man, sorry, I'm just having like this, the voice in the back of my head. Anybody remember the NPR jazz music? So it was a jazz musician who was an NPR who was converting KKK members.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was about, to your point, learning how to communicate. Right? So every culture has a dialect. White man is a culture. Entitled white man is a culture. Non-entitled white man is a culture. Black man, black woman, and I say this very loosely. I'm just saying that everyone is a member of a specific culture, whether that is by experiences, perspectives, preferences, etc. Learn how to speak within that culture, right? It's a dialect. So I hope I didn't rub everybody the wrong way for saying the way I'm saying, but everyone has a specific way of communicating, and everyone is able to learn. You just have to find the common ground with which they are comfortable and familiar. So if we're thinking about corporate folks, right? Marketing teams, data. You need data to prove that something works better than something else. And if you don't have the exact data, find similar enough, right? It means more work on our part. But if we are the members of our culture and community as artists who are representative and or advocating for underrepresented and marginalized groups, then it is in a sense our responsibility to do that because we have the means to do so, or because we have the passion to do so, or the drive and motivation to do so, to then help everyone else. Does that make sense?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, throughout my short career, I've had the privilege of not being I haven't been in that many diverse rooms with people who could fight back against it, going to a HBCU in Atlanta, and then Tyler Perry Studios. So, but I believe that it is ignorance, and willful ignorance is just a fight back against the being educated on the whatever subject or culture needs to be taught to them. So I believe that there is a mix of willful ignorance and unknown ignorance. And if it's unknown ignorance, then that's an opportunity to educate.
Yeah, definitely like what Saxton said as well. I definitely think that when people are ignorant, there is a way that you approach it where when you have a conversation with somebody and they have found out that there's a gap in their knowledge, there's some ways that they can go about it. They can go about it with, this defensiveness of that's not me, that's not who I am, I'm on your side, or they can go at it with genuine curiosity and wanting to learn and wanting to do better in the future. And sometimes that can present as defensiveness at first, and then they're like, okay, actually step back and want to learn to look inside myself. But the people who do not ever want to bridge that gap in their knowledge, to ever fill that gap. Yeah, there's a lot of people like that out there, and I think a lot of it is because they don't want to seem like they have gaps in their knowledge. They want to seem like they know everything, and that they don't want to understand that their experience is not the only experience that exists in the world, And
Right.
they can very willfully close their ears and eyes to everything that is happening around them, and the fact that different experiences happen around them, because they don't want to believe that, suffering or different, ways to live life, or that like their life could be better, or that they could have been better to people, could reflect on them in any kind of negative way.
Yep.
And the fact that they haven't done so often makes them very self-critical, and then that defensiveness, that insecurity, will project as willful ignorance. And that's the experience that I've had working throughout the game industry when I've tried to educate, various coworkers, and tried to meet them with like genuine, like empathy, and be like, I understand. This is not your lived experience, and that's okay. Here's a teachable moment if I have the energy and time to give you that teachable moment. But there's been so many more people who have come to me and being like, they want to tell me everything that they already know about my own culture.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, like you're not interested in actually what I'm saying and what my experiences actually are, and you're not interested in learning more. And I can tell the difference pretty well, and I'm trying to figure out how to communicate with the latter. Usually I just don't, because it wastes my energy and time. But if you have the time and energy to do so, if you have the space to do so, and if you belong to the same identity as somebody who is willfully ignorant, do us a favor and help educate your people, because we're tired.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sydney?
Oh my goodness. So, hi Fatimah, hi everybody. Thank you so much for this panel. It's been very insightful, and it's been wonderful to hear from all of you. I have a question as an aspiring storyteller and as someone who knows other storytellers, people who want to create things that make themselves feel seen, other people feel seen, yet kind of struggle with the anxieties, possibilities, and just the general reality that in today's society, the word representation can scare and anger a few people. You might know what I'm talking about. And I think with that pushback that like some sides give, where it's like, why do we gotta have this, or why do we gotta have that, when like sometimes sometimes you don't have to justify it, because it is what it is, because those people exist, but I digress. How, like, with when all your positions and the like, what advice would you give for like the next generation of artists, storytellers who want to create all of these things, yet might have like all of these worries and fears of like the reception they could have, things that people might say about them, and the like?
Full disclosure, Sydney Evans is a current apprentice at Tide Street. She's amazingly talented. Yeah, that's a great question. Let's start down the line. Lauren? Words of advice for the next gen.
So, for the next generation, when people try to say, oh, representation is dead, or like, DEI is dead, blah, 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 which someone said to me before, like pretty recently actually, where they're like, oh, companies aren't funding these projects anymore. And I'm just like, companies were like never funding these projects.
It's only for a couple of years, but it did last.
I was like, so you're saying my existence is only valid when it's trending? No, that's never gonna stop it. That's never gonna stop any of us. Like, I think it was the most ridiculous thing that I'd ever heard, because this was a professional as well. And it was insulting, because no matter what kind of resistance we've faced, we've always been out here creating our stories and making, the things that we love and are passionate about. There was an Afrofuturist, comic artist, Tim Fielder, who we featured on our show a long time ago. And he'd been making his stories since, I think the 80s. And Afrofantasy was not in vogue in the 80s. It wasn't really vogue in huge vogue until recently. But that never stopped him from making his stories. And when his time came, his stuff got a lot of reach and traction because of how the culture had shifted. But that it never reflected on the fact that he was going to choose whether or not to make that project, because this is something that he believed in, something that he was passionate about, and something that represented a concept that he felt was important enough to depict as art. And so I think no matter what is going to happen, trends will rise and fall, but we're always going to be here. So we're always going to make our art. We can never let those trends stop us from making our art. There's always going to be haters no matter what. But if we made things dictated on what people would say, then so many things would never get made. So let your projects be made and make what you believe in, and the people who believe in it will find you. You can't please everybody, and you're never supposed to please everybody. True art finds the people who want that art and will touch them in a way that is important to them and that matters to them. So make your true art, please.
Well, I am the next generation, but from what I've been learning is you just gotta do it. You gotta make the project that you're dreaming of. That's literally what I'm doing right now. Like I probably wouldn't get the funding that I would want for the films, but I'm currently crowdfunding for it. I just know I gotta do it, and we're literally seeing with this new generation that you just gotta do it. Like with Curry Baker was an obsession in the back rooms. They built their community and their fans through YouTube, and that got them to where they are now. So you just gotta get your work out there and let people see it, and then your community will find you, and your community will rise you up to where you want to be.
I have two questions. One, why make the art? What does the art mean to you? And number two, what does success mean to you? How do you define success? Because at the end of the day, you're making the art, nobody else's. And two, success to win some big old award. That award will collect dust one day. You will constantly be working for the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, to where, so this is coming from Los Angeles. It's not my thing, but it is, I started to notice a pattern that the top 3 causes of death were suicide, cancer, and drug overdose. What does that say about the lifestyle in Los Angeles? Especially when they're constantly working for the next big thing. Do it because you love to do it. Doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. If success is people appreciating your work, or you loving your work and appreciating yourself. So like for me, success is being able to eat and drink every culture of the world with the people that I love. I'm able to do that now. I don't need an Oscar. I don't need an Emmy. I don't need a Grammy to show myself that I am successful. Right? And I continue to love what I do. So, do what you love. Money will come. And do it because you want to do it and you love to do it.
And do it fearlessly. You can't have fear for putting your artwork out. When you make it for yourself, because it touches something inside you in your spirit that brings you joy, and you're living within your purpose, because it's a calling, right? We have this desire. Everyone's in this room right now because they love animation, they love storytelling, they want to be a part of that community. Anxiety is also part of that, right? You're afraid, oh, well, what's everybody else gonna think? But I've learned throughout my career and my life is I kind of work with blinders on when it comes to telling the things that I want to put out there. I try to make the things that I want to see. I always tap into my 7-year-old self, right? Because my 7-year-old self would pick up a crayon, piece of paper, and just go right at it, right? But as you're an adult, you have so many things like, man, who's my audience? Where's this gonna go? You know what I'm saying? And then it starts affecting your creativity. I'm 100% sure that within your anxiety, there's other people out there that have the same anxiety. So put that into your story, right? I'm also a new author. I have a manga book that's being announced this weekend at Anime NYC. It's my first manga. And, that community is large and wide, right? They're very picky about what they should read, and I have anxiety right now. Are people going to appreciate it? It's a story I want to tell. We tend to make things that we would want to see because the major corporations are making those stories for us, so we have to do it ourselves. And in doing so, there's anxiety that goes along with it. But if you don't tell your story, you'll never find out, right? If there's people that can connect with the same feelings and the same emotions and the same life that you've grown up in, if you don't put it out there, then you'd still be looking for that type of story. So be fearless, tell your story, and don't be afraid to put it out there.
Thank you. Such a good way to put that, you know? If you don't have those wild emotions and butterflies, you're probably not doing it right. Don't be stat. ASIFA team, how are we doing on time?
Just about done.
We're just about done. Do we have one more question?
Yes, yes.
Okay, in front.
Okay, I have a question. So my mom's from Panama, and I really love the culture, and all my stories are based on the culture, and I'm crazy about it. But how do you go about like researching the history and like adding it to your stories, and trying to find like, because it's a different language, and you know history is, like you mentioned, how even the music gets tarnished sometimes. How do you find the accurate history and stuff like that?
Accurate research, I can, yes.
Go there. So go there, you know, and connect with the communities. Right? Like if you have family, so for example, this is a mission that I'm also on right now in connecting with my Taino roots in Puerto Rico. And so, so the thing about research, so the reason I fall in love with research is because I always wanted to be a detective, but I didn't want to be a cop for 12 plus years. So when I found that academia, or within academia, I could be my own detective in different capacities, I fell in love with it. Be the detective, you know, and be in the places that you want to represent, and have the conversations, hear their stories, have the food, hear their stories, hear their music, because they're the most representative, or accurately / appropriately representative of these places. And it's okay to also go to other places that are celebrating that culture, because this is the fascinating thing about diasporas, right, or the diaspora, is that there is no wrong way to be of the culture if you are embracing that culture and including others, right? This is, so when I was using the word culture, like, you know, white culture, black culture, whatever, this is a very loose term. Culture is not really one defining right way, right? It's a hodgepodge of what we experience on a daily basis. Culture is constantly changing. So this is where it also gets tricky, this idea of representation, because accurate, appropriate representation may be different in a decade, right? In 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, right? Ask yourself, who, what, where, when, why, how are you representing this culture? Because again, the culture is different, because 1950s Panama might be very different from contemporary Panama, or colonial Panama, right? So that's where you have to consider your research, answer the who, what, where, when, why, how, and that will give you then, instead of being overwhelmed by all the things, right? This is like dissertation research. You want to do all of the things, but you only have 3 to 4 years, maybe more if you have funding, to really dive into this one idea. So bring down the purview to this one specific thing and tie on to that, right? And this is so exciting. I'm excited for you because now you have so many opportunities of how you want to depict that culture in different ways. Do you want to do 1950s? Do you want to do it in the perspective of a male, of a female, non-binary, gender fluid, right? Two-spirit. You want to do indigenous. You want to be someone who is who has been colonized into, you know, a new or different Panama, right? So the world is your oyster. But in whatever you are representing or trying to do, just bring down the scope into that, and then you can have your endless list of all the things you want to do. I hope that's okay.
Y'all should look at our art, y'all. It's really wonderful. It's really beautiful.
Amazing. Thank you all. And, you know, a big, huge thank you to our panelists today. Such amazing insights. them online. We can do a quick rundown to shout out your socials. Okay.
At Saxton Moore, so my name on Instagram, social media, YouTube, got a YouTube channel. That's just at Saxton Moore.
At Real Scoring, or EEL Scoring. That's on Instagram, YouTube, X, although I never use it. I don't touch it. And then you can also go onto UGA's Film and Media Scoring Program page, and you can find my email there if you want to have more academic talk or want to ask about the program.
You can find me on Instagram at Sax, S-A-X, the number 10 _junior, J-R. Other platforms, it's as simple as looking up Saxton Moore Jr., but include the junior where you'll find it. Yeah.
All right, you can find me at Lab Illustration, L-A-B Illustration, Instagram, Blue Sky, whatever, like all these other platforms, and on YouTube, my channel is youtube.com/C painted in color /painted in color. That's the podcast. We have our 83rd episode out now, by the way, so we've been doing it for a long time. So it's an art advice podcast. I aim to uplift marginalized artists and talk about the real life of a working artist in the industry. So check it out.
And if you want to follow my production of my current short film, you can look up kudzu_film.
Thank you all.